My 33F husband, 34M, played a cruel prank on our son. How do I get him to make this up to him? We have been married for 8 years now, and together we share a beautiful 7-year-old son. Both my husband and my son are incredible blessings in my life, and most of the time, our little family feels like a harmonious unit. Sure, we have our occasional disagreements. What family doesn't? But nothing that ever truly shakes the foundation of our bond. Or at least, that's what I believed until last night. As Christmas approaches each year, our household buzzes with excitement. We've had a long-standing family tradition where, exactly 1 week before Christmas, we each get to open a single gift early. It's a ritual that has always filled our home with laughter and joy, creating memories that feel as precious as the gifts themselves. This year, our son had been talking nonstop about how much he wanted the new PS5 Pro. His face would light up every time he saw a commercial for it on TV, and he'd chatter endlessly about the games he dreamed of playing. I assumed naturally that my husband, being as attentive as he is, had taken care of this. After all, I'd already spent my savings on gifts for him and other members of our extended family. Last night, the moment came. Our son eagerly eyed the largest box under the tree. His excitement was infectious. He practically trembled with anticipation as he ripped the wrapping paper apart. The box underneath revealed what he had been dreaming of. It was a PS5 Pro. His eyes widened in amazement, and he let out a delighted shout, "It's here! It's really here!" But as he opened the box, his expression quickly shifted. Instead of the sleek console he had been imagining, the box was filled with rocks. Actual rocks. Nestled among them was a plain t-shirt that read, "No one dad." The room went silent, save for my son's confused voice as he asked, "Is this a joke?" I stood frozen for a moment, my mind racing to process what had just happened. My husband, on the other hand, burst out laughing. "It's just a prank," he said, doubling over with amusement. "I borrowed my friend's PS5 box to make it look real. Classic, right?" He seemed oblivious to our son's crestfallen face or the tears welling up in his eyes. My son stared down at the box, the joy he'd felt just moments ago dissolving into disappointment. "But I thought," he murmured, his voice trailing off. My heart broke as I knelt beside him, pulling him into a hug. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered, though I wasn't sure how to make it okay. Turning to my husband, I demanded, "How could you think this was funny? Look at his face!" But instead of apologizing, he shrugged and said, "He should be grateful he even gets this much attention. A lot of dads out there don't even bother showing up." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Grateful? For what? For being humiliated in front of his own family? For having his dreams turned into a cruel joke? I was furious, but more than that, I was deeply disappointed. This wasn't the man I thought I'd married, the man who was supposed to be our son's role model. After putting our son to bed, he was too upset to stay up any longer. I confronted my husband again. "You need to make this right," I said firmly. "You don't understand what this has done to him." But he was defensive. "You're overreacting," he said dismissively. "It's just a harmless joke. He'll forget about it in no time." "No, he won't," I snapped back. "You've taken something he was genuinely excited about and turned it into a source of pain. You don't just get to brush this off." Now, as I sit here writing this, I'm at a loss for what to do. My son doesn't deserve to feel this way, especially not during what should be the happiest time of the year. I know my husband loves him, but his actions last night didn't reflect that love in the slightest. How can I convince him to take responsibility for what he's done and repair the damage he's caused? Our son deserves better, and so does this family. Update 1. This story brings back a vivid memory from my own childhood in the 1990s. I desperately wanted a small TV for my room. A big deal back then. We only had one family TV, no cable, and just a few channels we could pick up with an antenna. Having my own TV felt like a distant dream, but I hoped for it every Christmas. That year, my dad placed a half-wrapped box under the tree with my name on it, tucked toward the back. It was heavy and my excitement soared. I imagined watching my favorite shows like Animaniacs in the privacy of my room, a little escape in a world that often felt overwhelming. On Christmas morning, with my siblings gathered around, I eagerly opened the box, anticipation buzzing in the air. But instead of a TV, I found a vacuum cleaner, a literal vacuum cleaner. My dad stood there laughing, reveling in what he thought was a genius joke. He even quipped that it was so I could help clean the house more. My heart sank, not just because I didn't get the TV, but because of how humiliated and small I felt in that moment, with my siblings looking on. To make it worse, he later tried to take the vacuum back, but I refused to give it up. I kept it out of spite and never used it, not even once. That memory still stings to this day. It wasn't just about the joke itself. It was about the intentional cruelty, the way he seemed proud to break my spirit, as if that was some sort of personal achievement. Even now, as an adult, I can laugh about it to some extent, but the damage it did to our relationship has lingered. Things between us remain strained, a constant reminder of how much those moments of humiliation shaped the way I see him. What makes this situation with your husband even more troubling is that it involves a 7-year-old boy, a child who will carry this memory with him for the rest of his life. His father didn't just let him down, he crushed a moment of pure, innocent joy. I have no doubt that if your husband couldn't afford to buy a PS5 and he had been honest with your son, your boy would have understood. Kids can be incredibly resilient when faced with the truth, but to set him up like this, to let him believe he was getting something he dreamed about, only to shatter that illusion in such a cruel way, it's devastating. You can't force someone to make amends or see the error of their ways. The only thing you can control is how you respond and the actions you take moving forward. Start by sitting down with your son. Let him know that you hear him, that you see how hurt he is, and that his feelings are valid. Tell him that what happened wasn't okay and that you're upset too, not just for him, but with him. Use this as a moment to teach him that pranks like these, the ones that hurt and humiliate, are never acceptable. Make sure he knows it's okay to stand up for himself and to express when something isn't right. Then, you need to take a hard look at your relationship. Ask yourself, is this the kind of man you want your son to look up to? Is this the role model you want shaping his understanding of what it means to be a father, a partner, a man? Your husband's actions and his dismissive attitude afterward point to deeper issues. When you said that most things are fine, it hints at underlying problems that might have been easy to ignore until now. Is the good in your relationship truly outweighing the bad? A good father doesn't humiliate or bully their child for a laugh. A good father supports, nurtures, and loves their child unconditionally. They spend quality time teaching through their actions what it means to be kind, empathetic, and respectful. They build up their children's confidence, not tear it down. If your husband can't see the harm he's caused or refuses to take responsibility, it might be time to reconsider whether this is the future you want for yourself and your son. Update 2. The next morning, when my husband read the letter, his expression completely changed. His eyes filled with tears, and for the first time since everything happened, he seemed to understand the pain he had caused. Without saying a word, he got up, holding the letter in his hand, and left the house. I thought he was just going out for a walk to think things through, but the entire morning passed and he still hadn't returned. By noon, I started to feel worried. I tried calling him, but he didn't answer. A sense of unease crept over me. My son, noticing my concern, asked, "Mom, is Dad coming back?" "Of course, honey," I replied, trying to keep calm. "Dad just needs some time to think." But as evening fell and he still hadn't come back, my worry turned into fear. Finally, around 8 p.m., I heard footsteps outside the door. My husband walked in looking tired and as if he'd spent the entire day deep in thought. He wasn't holding any gift box, only a look of heavy emotion in his eyes. He walked over to our son, sat down on the floor to be at eye level, and said, "Son," his voice trembling, "I'm sorry I made you sad. I spent all day thinking about what you wrote in your letter. I realized that it's not a PS5 or any gift that will make you happy. What you need is to feel loved and valued, and I failed to give you that. I truly apologize." My son looked at him with wide eyes. "You don't need to buy me anything, Dad," he said, with a sincerity that melted my heart. "I just want you to play with me. We can play anything." My husband nodded, his eyes watery. "I promise to spend more time with you from now on," he said. "I don't want to make you sad anymore." That night, instead of buying a material gift to make up for it, my husband spent the entire evening playing puzzles and telling jokes with our son. Their laughter filled the house, erasing the heavy silence that had lingered in the days before. And I realized that sometimes true change doesn't come from expensive gifts or elaborate words, but from being truly present and understanding the people we love. Although there was no PS5 that day, I knew that what we rebuilt within our family was far more valuable than any gift could ever be. Update 3. The next morning, when I woke up, the bed beside me was cold. My husband had left very early without me knowing. My son's letter was still on the table, and I couldn't stop wondering where he was and what he was doing. The whole morning passed in worry, and though I tried calling him, his phone was out of service. By noon, I started to feel uneasy. Deep down, I had the feeling that he was doing something risky, and it made me even more anxious. The snow outside was still thick, and the freezing weather added to my concerns. It wasn't until evening, as darkness fell, that I received a call from an unknown number. "Ma'am," a man's voice said on the other end, "your husband is currently at the hospital. He passed out due to the cold, but don't worry, he's out of danger. I think you should come here right away. There's a story you need to hear." I nearly dropped the phone. My heart pounded as I rushed to the hospital. When I arrived, a middle-aged man, who introduced himself as the owner of an electronics store, was waiting for me in the hallway. His face was serious but full of compassion. He gestured for me to sit down and began to recount what had happened. "Your husband came to my store early this morning. He asked if he could buy a PS5 for his son. I had to tell him that we'd been out of stock since last week, and the heavy snow had delayed deliveries. I thought he would leave, but he didn't. Instead, he looked out the window, saw the thick snow covering the store and my house, and said, 'If I can't buy a PS5, at least I want to do something to make up for what I've done to my son.'" The man paused for a moment, as if to make sure I understood the weight of those words. Then he started shoveling snow. I thought he would do it for a little while, but he kept going, bit by bit, even as the cold wind reddened his face and hands. I told him to stop, but he said he needed to do this. After 30 minutes, he collapsed right in front of my house. I felt my heart ache as I listened. The store owner continued, "I called an ambulance immediately. While waiting, I thought about what he said. He is truly a father who loves his child, even if he made mistakes. But he wanted to make things right. I think he deserves a second chance." He then took out a box, a brand new PS5, still sealed. "This is from my last batch. I had planned to save it as a gift for someone else, but I think your family needs it more." Tears welled up in my eyes as I took the box. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you so much." When I entered the hospital room, my husband was awake, though pale and with cold hands. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his eyes full of regret. "I couldn't get the gift for our son." I sat down beside him, placing the PS5 on the table. "You did," I said, taking his hand. "But the most important thing isn't the gift. It's that you tried your best for our son and our family." Update 4. That evening, when my husband had somewhat recovered, our entire family returned home. Outside, the air was still freezing, and thick snow blanketed every street. But inside our little house, the warmth of laughter and love filled the space. My husband placed the PS5 on the table, but instead of opening the box immediately, he sat down beside our son, taking his small hands in his own. "Son," he said, his voice full of tenderness, "what I learned today is that you don't need a PS5 to be happy. What you need is for me to be here with you, to love you, and to listen to you. I promise I'll spend more time with you from now on." My son smiled, his eyes sparkling with joy. "I love you, Dad. We can play together no matter what it is." That sentence seemed to melt every bit of distance between father and son. We decided to open the PS5 as a family, but what happened next was the most surprising. My husband suggested that instead of keeping the gaming console just for ourselves, our family could use it to connect with others and do something meaningful. He said, "It's so cold outside, and there may be families who lack warmth more than we do. We could use this to bring joy to other kids." So the next day, our entire family organized a small gaming session in the neighborhood, inviting families with children to join. Laughter echoed everywhere as kids tried playing games for the first time, and even the parents got swept up in the simple joy of it all. From then on, our little house became more than just a place for our family to gather. It turned into a center of connection for the community. Every week, we hosted gaming nights or small activities so everyone could come closer together. My husband completely changed as well. No longer a father too preoccupied with work, but a true companion to our son. Watching my son and husband play together, I felt my heart overflow with gratitude. It wasn't the PS5 or any material gift that brought happiness to our family. It was the change, the care, and the sincere love that kept our family whole. And in that freezing winter, I realized that sometimes from small hardships, we can build something truly miraculous, a happy family and a community filled with love. Update 5. That winter passed, but what happened left a deep mark on our family. Since that incident, my husband has completely changed. He not only spends more time with our son, but has also become a more devoted husband. Those cold winter evenings are no longer silent or dull. Instead, the whole family gathers together, not just to play PS5, but also to talk, share funny stories, or even plan exciting activities for the weekends. The PS5 became more than just a gift of joy. It turned into a bridge that brought our family closer together. My son no longer plays alone. He often invites his dad to join him. The games are not just a form of entertainment, but also a way to build a stronger bond between father and son. Once, my son giggled when my husband clumsily lost a game, and he just shrugged and smiled. I'm not as good as you, but I'm so happy to play with you. It wasn't just within our family. Our relationships with neighbors also grew closer. After that shared gaming session in the winter, we organized many other activities: outdoor movie nights, small soccer matches between families, and warm dinners where everyone shared homemade dishes. From a cold, distant neighborhood, we became a tight-knit community where people cared for and helped one another. One day, my son brought home a piece of paper from school. It was an essay assignment titled My Hero. He had written about his dad with simple but heartfelt words. My dad is not a superhero, but he has done things I thought only superheroes could do. He shoveled snow on a very snowy day just to make me happy. But the most important thing is that he taught me that love and effort can change everything. My dad is my hero. I read the essay, and tears streamed down my face. From a thoughtless prank, my husband learned a profound lesson about responsibility and love. And because of that, my son also learned a valuable lesson that nothing is stronger than love and sincere care. That winter passed, but the warmth in our family's hearts remained. These changes didn't stop at one season. They became the foundation for building a happier family. And I know that even if the coldest winters return, the love and connection we share will always be the fire that keeps all our hearts warm.